Namaste and welcome to another bicycle live stream. It's Monday, October the 7th, and I've got to say it's a Monday that feels like a Sunday. Very quiet, it's a public holiday, so yeah, I keep forgetting that it's actually a Monday. Anyway, I've ridden 29 kilometres, temperature's got up to 22 degrees, it's rather pleasant now, and got the wind behind me now, so I'm starting to ride home because been a bit of a strong breeze I've been riding into as I headed north, but heading south now. So thank you for those that are coming on and watching. So this morning's topic, a bit of an interesting one. What's an emotional splinter? This is actually a terminology that I invented a couple of weeks ago, and I'll explain how it came about and I'll explain what it is in reference to. So I had an experience, a couple of experiences actually, in recent times. One of them was probably about 3 weeks ago now, but I haven't had the chance to live stream about it. I was talking, I'll keep it, I won't go into full details because anyway, a very close family member has not, in the last year or so, has not really been himself. There's been moments of, hasn't always had moments of great clarity, I'll put it that way. And I was talking to another family member was talking to me about this, I'll put it that way, and saying that that they, in their most recent therapy session that they'd had, there was somewhat of a breakthrough with this family member, and he suddenly became very capable of remembering stuff from a long time ago in great detail, and it was just such a wonderful sort of relief. He was so happy. He was so happy that he was able to remember these things. So, and you know, his whole demeanour had changed. And as I was being told this, sort of without any understanding at the time of what was going on, I started crying. It just struck me. It really, you know, and I thought, wow. And I sort of had to step back and sort of go, I'm not sure why, I said, but I'm reacting extremely strongly emotionally to what you've just told me. And, you know, I went and sort of contemplated, why was I reacting emotionally so strongly to knowing that this close family member had had a bit of a breakthrough and was feeling happy at being able to remember things from the past. And, you know, and I started thinking about it, and I started also comparing it to another recent event that had happened with me, which was in my own kinesiology therapy, was having some strong emotional reactions to some of the things that came up during kinesiology sessions. And I started putting two and two together, and I analysed it, thought about it, meditated on it, and came up with a terminology of what I was experiencing was coming from an emotional splinter. And what I wanted to do was try and explain what I mean by that. So hopefully this wind isn't too windy for you. So imagine in real life you get an actual splinter. So, you know, it's such a small thing. You might, from time to time, I get a splinter in my finger, my thumb, a little piece of timber gets in there. You can almost not see it, but the effect that it has is quite noticeable. There's a slight swelling, but there's a constant niggling pain there that stays with us for however long the splinter is with us. Usually seems longer than what it is, but it's at least a few days that this splinter sticks with us in our hand or maybe in our toe or something like that. And sometimes we'll try and pull it out and we might be successful, and other times we might not. The point being that splinter is so small, almost imperceptible, yet has such a strong effect on us. That's in the physical sense. So if we use this analogy to think of an emotional splinter, and it's very important to understand where emotions come from. Emotions come from our thoughts. They don't come from our feelings and our emotions come from our thoughts, from our mind. They don't come from our heart. And it's very important to make that distinction. So an emotional splinter is having a thought that is painful, or a painful reaction to a situation or an event that might seem at the time rather small, almost imperceptible, like the little splinter in our finger. And so it's almost unnoticed by us. But on a subconscious level, the thought is unpleasant, the thought is irritating. And what we do is we react in a way that puts an emotional splinter into us. So what we do is we're always avoiding pain as much as possible, both emotionally and physically. And so with a physical splinter, we're trying to avoid that happening, we try to pull it out. With an emotional splinter, our reaction to something that we are not particularly happy with, but we don't know what to do about, or we don't know how to react to it, or we just have to put up with it. Our reaction is to sort of put a little bit of a band-aid over it, I guess, would be one way of looking at it, to try and tolerate this thought that we find discomforting. So, and it may just be like a physical splinter, something really tiny, but it stays there and it festers, and it can become something that, unaware to us, is actually a deeply seated discomfort. And then when at a certain period in time, we get a reminder that the splinter is there, and it may come as quite a surprise. In the same way that the splinter in our thumb or our finger is there, just a little bit sore, and then one day you press on something, ow, geez, that hurt, ow, like stubbing your toe. You don't have to hit it very hard, but it's like, ow. That's what the emotional splinter component is as well. Something comes up that just presses the emotion enough for us to feel the hurt. And in the case that I started this live stream talking about with my family member, whatever my emotional splinter was, it didn't take much to push it and make it hurt, because as soon as I heard that my family member was experiencing a clarity again and was experiencing memories that he hadn't been able to experience for the longest time, this was of immense relief to me and made me realize that I'd been carrying for quite some time an emotional splinter buried just beneath the surface. And my reaction when I started crying on hearing the news of my family member's progress in a therapy session, my reaction was so strongly emotional that I realized that I was carrying a component of coping with the way that things had been going for this family member. In other words, I was not consciously aware that I'd set up this emotional splinter. I was not consciously aware that I was unhappy about this family member, and I was just living with it, basically. You know, just living with the splinter, putting up with the pain, and not consciously aware that it was buried just a little bit under the surface, very close to the surface, and didn't take much for it to start to feel painful. And so what can we learn from this? What can we learn from the emotional splinters that we subconsciously create? Well, they are an indication of, because emotions and feelings come from our thoughts, we get some wind now. Ooh. They are an indication of the things that we're having difficulty processing, like this wind. I'll be out of it again in a second. Sandra says, thanks for sharing. Thanks for watching, Sandra. So they're an indication of things that we're having difficulty handling, and they give us a bit of a guide as to where we can focus on the areas that we can focus on in our thoughts to help us find a more peaceful state of being. And of course, as always, the practical way of achieving this is through meditation, through connecting with nature, yoga, through the techniques that will take us into a heart-centered condition. So, and also through other techniques that I highly recommend, such as kinesiology, where we don't even have to put energy into it ourselves. We allow the therapist or the kinesiologist to rebalance our thoughts, our emotions, our energy. So have a think next time something comes up for you, because you probably won't be aware of it in the same way that I wasn't aware of the emotional splinter until something triggered it. So have a think. If you get something being triggered and it has a very strong emotional reaction that you weren't aware of, that there may be this little splinter under the surface that is an indication of where you can do some self-help work. So I hope that's helped. I'm just going to see if there's any comments I've missed, because these live streams with the new phone, no, that's good. Okay, so thank you for watching. Remember to live vegan and save lives. I'll speak to you soon. Ahimsa.